The deep dive into modern lithium-ion battery storage, sponsored by A&R Solar. You're here in the right place at 12:05 p.m. Pacific time, March 31st, 2020. And we are broadcasting from the homes of A&R Solar staff in Seattle, Washington, and Portland, Oregon. We're very grateful for your attendance. And, hope you've cozied up to your screens with your lunch. I'm Michael O'Brien, and I'm the sales director here at A&R Solar. I'll be serving as your moderator today, and our presenter, TJ Merrill, is waiting in the wings. I'm going to unmute him in just a second. By way of introduction, A&R Solar is one of the oldest turnkey solar installers in the Northwest, now working in our 13th year of business. We focus on high-quality solar installations for homes, businesses, and utilities, and over the last year and a half, have become the largest West Coast installer of Tesla Powerwall batteries outside of California. And we also install happily LG Chem batteries and have installed others in the past. I know coronavirus is on everyone's mind, so I'll state that as of 2 weeks ago, A&R Solar has changed our business practices to strictly adhere to health official guidelines. Sales designers are working with customers at a distance to get ready for the sunny season. I'm looking out the windows now and seeing some sun. And our field staff is abiding by the governor's specific orders given in each of our 2 states, Washington and Oregon. Please do contact us via our website if you have any questions about how we're still working and working on keeping people safe. All right, let's get started. As for housekeeping, your microphones are muted for the event, so tell your dogs and kids to just go crazy. No sweat there, no worries for noise. If you have a question, click the question mark on the right side of your screen and get it in there, and I'll prompt TJ with those questions throughout the presentation and during the Q&A period at the end. I also do have a copy of all the questions you sent ahead of time. Thanks for that. We'll get through them either by the content or the questions themselves. You can also raise your hand, but if you're raising to ask a question, you'll need to hit that question mark to tell me what that is. That's the only way we communicate right now. All right, so introduction of our presenter. Time to embarrass him a little bit. Thomas J. Merrill, or TJ Merrill, is a 4-year solar and battery storage veteran and the Washington residential sales manager for A&R Solar. He's a former entrepreneur, business leader, consummate tinkerer, especially in generators and batteries. In fact, he's told me in the past that solar just kind of gets in the way of the battery. So this is his love. He's a father of 2. He's a UW graduate, and at his years at Microsoft, shared the stage with Bill Gates on a number of occasions, so good speaker. He is nationally certified for solar and battery technical sales. He sits on the advisory board for several major solar manufacturers, and he is here to present some great content and stimulate some great questions. So take it away, TJ. You should be unmuted.
Thank you very much, Michael. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining us. I hope that we can bring you some answers to many of your questions out there about storage solutions. It is a very wide topic area, so we did kind of dial it in around residential. We do residential, commercial, and utility scale, and we are working with utilities on microgrids and commercial clients on commercial storage. This presentation really is focused around residential storage. I grew up in the Midwest, and my dad did commercial and industrial generators. So I've been around technology and energy my whole life. I just love the idea of being, independent so that I don't have to rely on the grid. And kind of solar got me into modern storage. My in-laws' cabin up outside of Granite Falls on the Mountain Loop Highway loses power probably 30 times a year. So we got solar, and I've been just waiting for my father-in-law to give me the green light to install a battery system for him. Today he's like, it's nice and quiet up here. They have a fireplace, they're ready to go. But let's dive in. Hopefully I'll answer your questions. If not, I'll stick around and we'll have Q&A at the end. And then if you have more questions beyond that, I lead a team of a half dozen field solar and storage designers. And if you're serious about getting more information and even a free estimate, you can contact us through our website, and get somebody assigned to you once they get a handful of questions answered. Like I said, we do commercial utility. We are going to focus really on residential because commercial and utility scale is highly customized versus residential. They're 80% of the same. The secret is, making sure that last 20% is well designed for you. We do about 500 projects per year, with about a quarter of them being storage projects. So we really look for systems that are repeatable, supportable, scalable for our Northwest clients. So within any system, solar, you might have microinverters at the panel and not an inverter on the wall. Otherwise, you have optimizers up here to meet National Electric Code requirements and a string inverter on the wall. Batteries are totally optional. You can go solar without batteries, and you can do a battery system without solar. So the two are independent. We always design a solar system so it's easy, so we make sure, we'll often ask you, even if you say you're not interested in batteries, we will have some initial discussions so we can design it so that if you change your mind, we don't have to redesign the entire system to kind of meet your needs. Within battery systems, there are off-grid battery systems. We do focus on grid-tied hybrid battery systems. So we don't do off-grid systems. If you're interested in off-grid systems, I am certified in it, and we can get you to people that specialize in just off-grid systems, because there is usually a difference in the components that we'd recommend for it. We do see those coming together in the next year or two, where you might be able to use the same system we might use for grid tied for off-grid, but today that's really an exception and not the case. Before I dive in, really why do people buy home battery systems? The primary use here in the Northwest is for resilience, backup power. I sent an email this year, about 6 months ago, to Tesla and LG and SolarEdge with pictures of PSC and Seattle City Light showing almost 1 million people without power, because they didn't really understand, why do we do so much battery work up here? And I'm like, this is the reason right here. We have windstorms, ice storms, snowstorms, so backup power. That is the main reason we do battery systems here in the Northwest. We'll talk a little bit more about it, but there isn't, like in California, there's a huge financial reason, because they're paying 2 to 3x for power during peak times between, say, 3 and 8 o'clock. We don't have those pricing signals. We don't have those rate plans today. So I'm not even really going to talk about it. As soon as we hear those are coming, once smart meters are rolled out, which they are rolling out, you could expect within a couple of years that we will see the same thing. But today, it's really not the case. So people buy it for backup power, for increasing their independence. We call that self-consumption. We do have clients that are in a utility that uses a lot of coal-fired power, so they don't want to use that coal-fired power. So they want to store that excess energy in the batteries and then use it in the morning and at night, so they use as little of that power as possible. Some people do it just because they want to help transition the world to clean energy, and they know storage is a key tenet of a high penetration of renewable energy. Down in Oregon, we do have some time of use rates coming in, but like I said, that is not the case in Washington. And then finally, some people for off-grid usage. And like I said, we don't do off-grid systems today. We may reconsider that later this year, next year, primarily for people that it doesn't necessarily make sense to go off-grid if you can have grid access. But if the utility is saying it's going to cost $100,000 to $300,000 to bring power into your property, then it makes a lot more financial sense.
Hey, TJ.
Yep.
I might throw people, since this question was asked a couple of times offline here, I'll throw out a couple of resources for folks who have smaller applications or truly interested in off-grid and can only go off-grid. Our team refers folks to ZAMP Solar, I know, for RVs and small applications. And then also backwoodssolar.com out in Idaho does a great job with consulting folks for off-grid stuff, if that's truly the way you want to go.
Perfect. Thank you. So I recently did a community emergency response program training with a local fire department, and they were pretty adamant, you know, you should be prepared for 2 weeks plus of outage for on the grid. And that mainly is earthquakes, here being in the subduction zone, but obviously storms. We have had fires in the mountains here in the Cascades that have taken out transmission lines, which caused Seattle City Light to have to buy power elsewhere in the tune of almost $100 million one summer. So a lot of people think, you know, we don't have the same issues that California has with all their power shutdowns. All it takes is one really dry year, and we could be in the same boat with the fires. Luckily, we don't have the heavy winds with the Santa Anas, but we still do have, you know, some of those same issues. So I just went this winter, I had a 36-hour outage at my home because of heavy snow, took out power lines and transformers all over. Cascade subduction zone for earthquakes, the fires, as I said, and also with a drought, and we have over 1,000 dams here in Washington. If we have low water levels, that means hydroelectric isn't going to be able to meet its normal demands. And today, it doesn't meet all of our demands. We do have a lot of peaking plants that come online using fracked gas. So, you know, base loads of coal, hydroelectric, and then peakers that come online. We are definitely would rather see that being battery or pumped hydro or other things rather than gas peakers, but that's the way it is today. People have asked, a common question we're getting lately is, do I have to worry about the current COVID-19 affecting the grid? We certainly don't think it's a high probability. The Edison Electric Institute did do a memo recently saying it's going to affect 40% of utility workers directly or indirectly. We think they have a pretty good plan in place, so we don't see it being a major problem. But if we had another problem on top of it, let's say we did have a quake, now we have reduced staff that are available to fix problems. So you know, never say never, knocking on wood. Before I jump into storage, I just want to talk about generation, just so that people really understand. Today, we get most of our energy and power from the grid. So power is the instantaneous, and energy is power over time. So the grid is supplying most of our energy. Solar, wind also supplies a lot of it. And then if you're, you know, off grid or the grid's down, you know, you might have a generator. All of these share one thing in common. All the power that is generated has to be used. So they have to generate that instantaneously. So none of those systems alone without some kind of storage has a reserve. So even if you have, you know, a generator, even if you want to plug in just your phone to get a little bit of a charge, that generator has to be running at full speed in order to do that. So I kind of want to just separate out generation from storage. So we're talking here about hybrid grid-tied battery systems that allow solar to go back online during an outage. So during the day, if you have solar, today, if you have no battery, if the grid is to go down, you will see your solar system shutting down automatically. It has to by National Electric Code to protect line workers from us back feeding power onto the grid. So your solar system will synchronize to the voltage and frequency on the grid. And once it's synchronized, it will then supply power to the home. And if there's any excess, it'll flow out to the grid and you'll get a credit for it. That's called net metering. If the solar isn't enough, it'll pull power in from the grid. So it ebbs and flows, and you might see it ebb and flow all day long, in and out On a sunny day, you're probably pushing a lot more power, maybe many times what your home is using, out to the grid, and you get credits for that, and that's why solar works in the Northwest. Now, if the grid goes down during the day, if you have a battery system, your loads will get run from solar if it's sufficient, batteries if it's not. So it's a combination of solar and batteries. At nighttime, after your solar, after the sunset, you're only running from battery. Any questions?
Looking good so far, TJ.
Pretty straightforward. So, we definitely recommend people, if you have access to the grid, stay on the grid. Even if you want to do a battery system, stay on the grid. It is cost effective. All that excess solar that we generate during the day, we need some place to put that extra energy. So all of this extra energy that you're generating during the day while you're at work, unfortunately, all of us are at home now. Unfortunately, we're all at home now, so we're probably using it more evenly. But this is a typical day in the morning. You're getting ready. In the evening, you're cooking dinner. Solar is here during the day. All that extra, you'll put that in your battery, or you'll put it back onto the grid and get a credit for that. Sorry about that. One second. So stay on the grid, but be prepared for when there is problems on the grid. Now, for backup, are there alternatives other than battery systems? Absolutely. Generators are the most common. And you could do everything from a portable generator to an automatic standby generator. I grew up with generators. My wife hates our generator. She asked for our new home she doesn't want a generator. Just the smell, the sound, the noise, she doesn't really want to deal with it anymore, but they are an alternative, and we can integrate them at various levels depending on what your interest is. But a couple of things to really point out that I always like to point out is it has to be running constantly to have any power. So if you have a 2-day outage, do you really want to run your generator at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning in order to charge your phone? It's not the greatest on the noise level. It is toxic. You have to be very careful where these are sited. We did have neighbors once that fired up their generator and their carbon monoxide monitors started blaring, and he asked me to come take a look, and it's like, oh yeah, your furnace, your air intake is right there on that side of your house. You can't run it over there. Finally, fuel availability and storage is an issue. We have quite a few clients that have put in a standby generator, and they wanted to be prepared for an earthquake. And unfortunately, we had to let them know that after an earthquake, natural gas will be shut off. So you'd have to have local propane in order for it to be there. And there's a lot of other challenges, warranty and maintenance. So we'll talk more about where maybe they make sense. So advantages of a battery system over a generator, in my opinion, is really it's clean, it's quiet, it's completely automatic. There's little or no maintenance. Every year I have to go and change oil filters and air filters, clean them and change oil in all my friends and relatives that have generators, because otherwise I know it won't happen. And when they actually do need it, it's not going to be there. And then managing fuel, fuel goes bad. Most battery systems, all the ones that we carry, have at least a 10-year warranty. So it's really nice that they, completely automatic. You don't have to do anything with them. And then finally, sensitive electronics, depending on the generator, the quality of generator. Some can run sensitive electronics, others you really shouldn't run electronics with it. I like to kind of talk about, yep.
Maybe this is an appropriate question in terms of timing. Edward asks that he has a 12 kilowatt PV system and is looking to pair it with battery, but appears that maybe the Tesla battery can't be charged with a generator. Is that true? And what are his options?
I'll actually cover that in more detail, but it is currently Tesla does not support charging of the battery. We can integrate it, so you can either be running from a Powerwall system, or if that isn't, there's not sufficient solar to keep it charged, then you can run it from a generator. We're putting a lot of pressure on them to support that, and we'll also have solutions that do support the charging of the battery from something other than solar. We'll talk more about that when we cover Tesla.
Awesome, thanks.
Which solution is the best? I kind of break it out in types of outages. So short winter outages, the average outage in the Northwest, I believe, is 5 hours, according to the Energy International site, the US government site. Across the United States, it's about 7 hours. So if you talk short winter outages, battery backup, it's automatically, it happens, kick it over. If you conserve, you can easily get a day more. Solar will extend that. Long winter outages. Now that's really the challenge, right? So here in the Northwest, ice storm, snowstorm, windstorm, you're gonna have you could have a long outage. I've been personally through 2 5-day outages. So if you can't afford a battery system, maybe a generator, you maybe run it for a few hours in the morning, you run it for a few hours at night just to keep things charged up, take care of what you need. But odds are most of the day you're gonna be without power because unless you have a combination of battery and solar and a generator to have power 7x24, even in long winter outages. Long spring, summer, or fall outages, I use the earthquake example. If we had an earthquake today here in the Northwest, you would get by great all the way until about November on battery backup plus solar. You're gonna have decent generation almost every day, and it will take you without any fuel, no moving parts. It's gonna take you through a long outage. An extended outage due to an earthquake or disaster, that also kind of refer back to the other ones. When does it happen? I definitely personally plan to have battery plus solar, try to talk my wife into maybe getting a smaller generator or do some kind of vehicle to home to get me through the longer outages. And we'll talk about that more in a bit. So why solar? I won't go into it in detail, but clean, renewable, increases the value of your home, 26% federal tax credit on solar. You also can qualify for a 26% federal tax credit on the battery system if it's paired with solar. You pay for it through utility savings. And really, for the battery system, I don't talk about that as a payback without time of use rates. It's really the utility. It's really, do you want to have clean, quiet backup power? So what's that value to you, and does it make sense? And we're going to talk primarily about 2 battery systems. One is from SolarEdge, and they use LG's battery, and Tesla is the other one. So I showed this earlier. A typical summer day, solar generates power between 8 and 4 in the day is where most of the generation happens. Most of your usage is in the morning and the evening. So just keep that in mind. So that's a typical day. Now, a typical year, the orange here is solar generation. It kind of follows the same curve. So our shoulder seasons are January and December, where we have the lowest generation. This blue line is one of my past clients. He had, this is just his usage. So in the summer, he had an air conditioner, so he ran his air conditioner more. The key thing I want to point out here is this green line. When I worked with this client, he said, I can get by on 10 kilowatt hours. What is a kilowatt hour? The best way I describe it is your microwave draws about 1,000 watts or a kilowatt. And if you ran your microwave for an hour, that's a kilowatt hour. So 1,000 watts over an hour, kilowatt hour. So he said, I can get by on 10 kilowatt hours. I just need to run my fridge, some lights. He had gas heat, so I need to be able to run that a little bit. So we calculated, and he needed about 10 kilowatt hours. So starting in January, if we take his average solar generation, he could get from January all the way through November on 10 kilowatt hours a day from his 9 kilowatt array. So he had good south-facing exposure. So he got pretty good production. Now, here's his usage. If we were backing up his whole home, we could back up his entire home pretty much starting in March all the way through October on just solar and batteries if we look at the entire day. And then in the winter here, he would have to conserve, even if he's down to his key loads, he'd still have to conserve because we're generating less than he's using. So this is the kind of the work that we would go through. Any of the designers on my team would work with you to understand, what size array do you have, or we design an array. What are your typical loads if we didn't conserve, and then if you needed to conserve, what would be those key loads, and what would that look like? So here's the analogy that we use is a bathtub. So I like to describe a battery system as not being a fusion reactor. You don't get unlimited power out of it. Solar is fusion energy at a safe distance. So the sun out there, 120 million miles away, we're capturing that energy. That's equivalent to, think of it like a shower head. So the battery is your bathtub, shower head is solar, the grid is a faucet, the drain is your consumption, your usage. So as power is coming in, it's coming in usually slower than it's going out, but as long as you have a reserve, that reserve can stay full if you got a lot of production, and it'll slowly go down as your consumption goes up. So as an example, in the winter in December for an average size array, 9 kilowatts. We do have clients with 20, 30 kilowatt arrays, so double or triple this if you have a large array, but using a very typical array, we're generating 7 kilowatt hours a day. Your home's using, say, 15 kilowatt hours for your key loads, and so we're running those from battery and solar. 1 10 kilowatt hour will provide about a day of standby power. Now this will vary. If you're not conserving and you're running, electric ranges, we're backing up your electric car, now you're talking about hours of backup. But if you conserve, you can make it a lot further, and solar will extend that. So brighter months out of the year, when we design a system, we design for the worst month of the year, which is December. So when we're working with you, this is really what we're talking about designing for. Everything else, every other month is better. So when we're working with somebody, the key questions we're asking is, what do you need to back up? How long do you need to back it up? And then we're taking a look at those things, and we have automatic tools that will model all of those things. Are we integrating a generator? What's your time frame? What do we have for space? What do we have for budget? And then we're trying to find the best solution for all of the above. The most common things that we like to make sure to back up: refrigerators, freezers. I lost a huge Costco freezer full of food twice. Just poor timing on my part. We stocked up before a big storm, power went out. This was years ago. My home wasn't in a good place for solar, and batteries really weren't much of an option, years ago. But I lost, thousands in food. We always like to back up. A lot of people have gas furnaces still. We back those up, even though it's gas, it still needs power to ignite, run the fan. Lots of lights, outlets. If you have LED lights, we'll back up almost all of them because they're so light. Outlets, so you can charge things, internet, security equipment. If you don't have a battery on your garage door, we always back up the garage door. And then pumps, water pumps, septic pumps, sump pumps. We have lots of clients that their basements have flooded because their sump pump wasn't working, or their septic system backed up because the septic pumps weren't working. And then obviously, like our cabin up in Granite Falls, if we're not backing up the pumps, we have no water. So key things to back up. If I had to look at our typical client, it tends to be somebody that does have numerous outages per year. I live here in Seattle in Wedgwood, and I've had 6 outages in the last year. I don't know if I'm just in a bad spot, but lots of outages. They tend to be worried about outages from earthquake as well, or really big storms where, if you only have, if you think, you're gonna have a 10-minute outage once a year, that probably doesn't make sense for you to put the cost into a battery system. They tend to want to have, key things backed up. A lot of people want to avoid running a generator. They either don't want to mess with one, or they've had one and they're on their second or third. I think we're on our third at the cabin. They're really not. Emergency generators are designed to run long term, so people run them for 8-10 hours and then they're toast. They're just not designed for that. So, what are the key components of a modern lithium-ion battery backup system? So years ago, we did design, install, and support lead acid and other battery systems. We've really put a halt to all of it because there was just the complexity. It was very difficult to repeat it. They would have 7+ components that we'd have to integrate, and then a client would make some changes to it, and now it's not working. So we really took a step back several years ago. We're constantly surveying the industry, and we're looking for integrated solutions that we can deploy in mass and can support. We put a 10-year warranty on everything, so we want to be able to support it for 5, 10, 15 years and beyond. So we're looking for high quality warranted products. So we really have narrowed it right down. So on modern systems, they have 4 major components. The battery pack, which may have cells in it. So Tesla uses a 2170 cell, which is the same cell that you see in the Model 3. LG has their JH3, a prismatic pouch cell that they use in everything from like the Chevy Bolt, and they have pretty much every other car manufacturer other than Tesla using their cells. And those are all combined into a pack. And then you'll have, if you have solar, you'll have either a solar inverter or a combination solar battery inverter. If you have an existing solar that you installed years ago, then you would have a solar inverter, and a system like Tesla would provide the battery inverter and the battery pack. And then finally, there's mandated by code, by National Electric Code, is we have to have islanding equipment. So you'll hear it called an automatic transfer switch, or ATS, a gateway, an MID, a microgrid interconnection device, lots of different names for it. But this island equipment is specific to the manufacturer. It's not just a generic transfer switch. It's specific to the manufacturer. The 2 key systems. Yep.
I have a question from the audience. It might be a good time where you might be getting into it. Talk a bit about the safety elements that go into the design of not only the manufacturers, but what A&R does to ensure safety.
If I could hold that one, I do have a whole section on safety. I would like to give, if I don't get time to get to it, I'll make sure in the slides you'll have a listing of it. But there is extensive testing and certification at the cell level, at the pack level, thermal management. There's a lot of work that goes in to make these the safest possible battery systems ever. And I'll cover it more in a little bit, but suffice to say, I'm putting this in. I have 2 kids. I feel very confident that they have done incredible work on the safety front.
Thank you.
So the top system, so again, as I say, we survey new systems all the time, and they have to meet a very stringent requirement for us to support it. It goes through a full process of vetting, both the technology, so everything from our design and engineering, our electricians, our service department, everybody has to approve any system. And we've looked at probably 40 different battery systems, and these are the only 2 that have made it through. So these are the two that we support today. We might add a third, but we like these two systems cover pretty much every scenario, whether you have existing solar and you want to add a battery system, or you want to add a well-integrated battery solar system for a new installation. Both provide 5+ kilowatts of power, about 10 to 13.5 kilowatt hours per battery of solar or of storage. Tesla does not currently support battery charging. SolarEdge is planning on doing that. We actually have engineering samples of some of it, and we're testing some of that functionality. Both of these are available now. Tesla can scale up to 10 batteries per service, per 200 amp service, and we can support multiple services. So our average is 2 batteries per installation, but you can go up to 10, and it actually can go beyond that if you have a larger service. Both of them can be used with new installations. Tesla particularly is well suited for retrofits. So it is designed, if you have an existing solar system, and it can be microinverters, string inverter, whether we've heard of it or not, odds are we can pair it with a Tesla Powerwall system. And again, if it is paired with a solar system and charged primarily from solar, you do qualify for a 26% federal tax credit. And I've got some links here on both of them. There is a lot of design that goes into how many batteries are needed. You can do 1, you can do 10. Most people are going to need 2, either depending on what we're backing up. If we need to back up a 40 amp heat pump, we'll need 2 Powerwalls. If your solar system is greater than about 10.5 kilowatts, we're going to need 2 Powerwalls. This system can do a large solar system and a single battery. So we cover a lot of ground with these 2 systems. And I'll kind of dive into each one. I'm not going to go into this just due to time, but we'll make this available. A key thing that I'd like to point out is the National Fire Protection Association did do a full review, and I got a link to it. It's about an 80-page document. And they also looked at fire incident reporting over 14 years, and there was not a single incident that was identified to be involved with it. Now, that's not saying, that was since 2013. A key thing, I just was on a call with LG, and this about 6 months ago, I was on a call with them, and they were putting together some additional information for us, and they said that they had about 500,000 packs in cars. So they're the same thing. So you have a stationary battery here in a car, and after years, they had not had a single incident that was related to the battery, which I thought was pretty incredible, considering there are 170,000 plus fires. If you just Google car fires in the US, you'll see there's like thousands, 170,000 plus a year. So they did do a lot of work to make them very safe. But just because we have limited time, let's dive into the details of Powerwall and a little bit more into LG and SolarEdge. So Powerwall inside, as I said, this is an AC coupled battery. So this can be used without any solar. If you do have solar, it is AC coupled to the solar system, meaning you have a separate solar module, solar inverter, and then this battery, and it is a battery and a battery inverter in one. So this is not a solar inverter, just a battery inverter. Like I said, it uses the same cells as the Model 3, the 2170s. An interesting note is the bottom 2/3 can be fully submerged in water for 30 minutes. So it is outdoor rated. We do recommend batteries be installed indoors, but when we don't have any choice, we'll talk to you about the drawbacks. But you can definitely install them outdoors. Again, recommended inside. 13.5 kilowatt hours, 5,000 watts of power, it can go up to 7,000 watts for 10 seconds. And you can use it for backup power, solar self-consumption, time-based control, and they do our testing off-grid with this one if you do have an off-grid application. It does have 10 years of warranty, and I believe the last time I looked at the warranty, they warranted 75%. So after 10 years, you're still gonna have 75% of this battery's initial usable capacity available. In 10 years, you can probably put another one on the wall. So you can have, like I said, up to 10 of them on a service. They are not light, they're about 276 pounds. We have special dollies to be able to put them in place. They can be floor mounted or wall mounted in singles on the floor against a wall up to 3 deep. So you can put them in your garage is where the most commonplace is. What can you run with a single Powerwall? Really, it really comes at lights and light usage. As I said, most of our customers have 2 Powerwalls, mainly because due to electrical requirements, we often, due to the size of the solar and requiring 2 Powerwalls, and we're backing up an entire 200 amp panel, that usually puts us into 2 or 3 Powerwalls. And there's a requirement if there is, even if you could do a single Powerwall, if you have a breaker that's larger than 30 amps, inspectors will require a second Powerwall in order to back it up. So typical installation, have the grid, you have your utility meter. We usually are doing entire home backup. That's the most common, where we're backing up the entire service. So this is a 200 amp transfer switch. It is rated as fast as a quarter of a second, so about 100 times faster than a generator transfer switch. So it's almost instantaneous. So you might see the lights flicker. We've heard it can be as long as 5 seconds. We haven't ever seen that. It's instantaneous. I have clients all the time that say, I never even knew the power went out until I got a notification on my watch or on my smartphone. And then we're backing up the entire panel with solar and Powerwalls behind it. If it's a smaller solar system and light loads, then we can use an essential loads panel to back up just a handful of circuits. Probably about 10% of our Powerwall installations can do this. Like I said, though, it is usually a requirement due to various electrical calculations that we have to do to meet code that this is more common. So existing equipment in gray, new equipment in blue. This for Tesla is really the brains of the system. This gateway, mounting these batteries is pretty straightforward. There's DC and AC wiring, but it's pretty straightforward. This is where all of the brains are. It all gets wired into here. So this is the transfer switch. This has all the metering. This has all of the smarts. This is really where we spend most of our time intercepting your service entrance conductors and putting in this gateway and getting everything wired and commissioned here in this system. Couple example Powerwall installations. This is a single Powerwall system. This is actually a neighbor of my in-laws, and his goal I thought was interesting. He said, I just want to run my generator less. I know I'm not going to be able to run forever, in the winter, but he's like, I'm so tired of running my generator. And so he wanted to run his generator less, and I actually can show you, probably do it at the end. I'll show some more of the monitoring, but he's had probably 15 outages and he hasn't noticed any of them. A little bit larger solution here with twin Powerwalls and hidden conduit, where we're backing up one of the 200 amp panels. So we're backing up one of them. So one's a protected loads panel and this one is unprotected. So we put, hot tubs, things we didn't want to back up over here, and then all of his key circuits in this one. And you can see over here, there's a solar inverter. So the monitoring for Tesla, if you have a Tesla, it's the exact same app. Once we commission it, you'll just see another entry here for your home. And you'll see here in this example, generating 4 kilowatts of solar, The Powerwall is getting charged and your home's using 3. If the power goes out, you'll see a big X over it. You'll get a notification on your phone. And then here's my watch actually, when the power went out at work. We have a Powerwall backing up some key circuits. It lets us know when it's transferred, when it's providing power. And here it says Powerwall's returned to on-grid operation. So let me know it's back on. And if I want to come back in the office and work, I could.
TJ, question.
Question? Yep.
Yeah, we got about 10 minutes left, so I want to get some of these questions in for you. One of the key questions I'm getting from the audience is, why batteries now? What is technology rapidly increasing? And folks are also keeping in mind that the federal tax credit is going away in 2 years completely. How do you balance that?
That is an interesting question. That's a conversation we'd probably have about your situation. So the last 2 conversations I had, one of them was he worked for a high-tech company. He wanted to install a couple of Powerwalls for his mom who lived alone, and because she had recently moved, had a lot of outages. He didn't want to deal with generators or anything, and he owned a Tesla, so he just wanted it completely there. Another one for this gentleman is he thought it was interesting and would increase the value of his home, and he wanted to run his generator less. So it really is a personal conversation. I would say for batteries, it shouldn't be just a financial conversation, because we don't have the time of use rates like you see in other metropolitan areas. They're coming. So in 6 months, we could say, well, this is going to pay for itself in 6 years. So it's got a 10-year warranty. It makes financial sense to have as part of your investment portfolio. Yeah, you might invest in stocks and bonds. This is an investment to protect you against outages, earthquakes, rising energy. So it's part of your portfolio.
Thanks for that. I also imagine just saving a freezer full of meat or game, or if you're a hunter or fish, or
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So client $20,000 damage for his basement flooding, and his insurance did cover it, but they said, if this happens again, if you don't have anything, we're going to raise your rates. So he's like, how about if I put in a backup system? And they said, we won't raise your rates if you put in a backup system. So he wanted to put in a backup system. Right. So it is really, yeah.
Sorry about that. Another question, I'm getting a lot here, and I know you keep your finger on the pulse of a lot of different technologies. Generac, Pika, all these other things. Why aren't they in the mix for you in terms of the Northwest?
That's a longer conversation. The short of it for almost all of the systems is that they didn't meet our scaling capabilities. We do systems from 4 kilowatts to 45 kilowatts. So a lot of these systems were designed really for the California market, where they have a 4 to 7 kilowatt system. Our average is larger than a lot of those systems can handle. They sound great, and if you have a small enough system, they do look like they work. There are some issues with some of other systems, but for us is really, we need something that works for small, medium, large, extra large, and we're not seeing that in the market. I have a document that I'm happy to send out. I send it to all the OEMs that come to us, like, hey, we want to be one of your battery vendors. And most of the time when they go through it, they're like, oh yeah, we'll talk to you next year, maybe the year after. So I still have a lot of content to go through. So let me just keep going really fast, and I'll stick around for additional questions. And happy to continue the conversation through one of my reps or myself. SolarEdge, StorageEdge, and LG is the other system that we really like. This works well today for those small and mid-sized systems. It's well integrated from the rooftop and the panel all the way through to backup, and even EV charging here pretty soon, so that it's well integrated together. We do a lot more Powerwalls, and we've provided a lot of feedback to them on how what we'd like to see. They asked us to become part of their product advisory council, and then we gave them a ton of feedback. And in the last 2 years, they're coming out with products that are going to scale and be a lot more usable for us. The key thing for us is that this year they will have the ability to do auxiliary AC charging. So that could be a generator, 240 volt split phase generator. Maybe it's a Tesla Cybertruck. Tesla says they're going to have a 240 volt outlet, probably a couple 2,000-3,000 watts, and we could integrate that in. There are some other things that are coming, but the key thing for us is this allows Tesla's always had a 200 amp transfer in their backup gateway. SolarEdge is adding a 200 amp gateway as well, so we can have a very large array and one battery. So it gives us some flexibility if somebody wants a smaller battery system and have a large solar system, and then definitely adding the charging of batteries. So we can integrate a generator with Tesla, but we can't charge the batteries. It's really, you're running from Powerwall or you're running from a generator. With this, you can have both running at the same time. We even can, if a generator supports it, we can actually automatically start it, charge up the batteries, and then turn it off. So this is, a very integrated system. It's not out yet. We have engineering samples. We've installed it at one of our employees' homes, and we're beating on it right now as we speak. So probably mid-year is what we expect. A key part of that is vehicle to home. People ask about this all the time. What's the future of that? Today, we have no access to that. If you have an EV, we have no access to that high voltage traction battery to be able to do anything real. I mean, you can plug into your cigarette lighter and get a couple hundred watts out of it. You can hook onto the 12 volt battery with some, big clips like battery charger clips and get a little bit more out of that. But if you draw too much out of it, you damage the battery, you damage your 12 volt system, you void your warranty. So be very, I would issue caution. Until the automotive industry supports it, you're not going to have true vehicle to home. So your EV is going to get smarter. So you'll often see V2H or V2G, vehicle to home, vehicle to grid. So Nissan and Mitsubishi are both Japanese auto manufacturers. After the Fukushima disaster, they had all of these cars with high voltage batteries full, and they couldn't use those to run the water pumps to keep that nuclear facility cooled. So Japan put in requirements that they do it. So there will be later this year, we expect. We're talking to manufacturers, including Wallbox, with their Quasar. They'll have a DC charging system that is a two-way charger that is grid tied. So it will not provide backup power for you because it has to be a hybrid grid tied to be able to provide power when the grid's down. It still synchronizes with it, but I sent them some detailed engineering schematics and said, if we have, this system or this system and one of your new DC bidirectional chargers, would it be able to provide load support during an outage? And they said yes, so long as you have a system that is doing the islanding and microgrid voltage and frequency will synchronize to it and will provide load. So it's coming. It's still a ways out. I always recommend that you have a home battery system, because what happens, I travel a lot. So if we had, even if it was here today and I'm in Eastern Washington meeting with clients, doesn't do my family any good here, especially if I can't get back over the mountains. So I recommend really having both if you can swing it.
EJ, just want to jump in, and I'm going to let you keep on going. There's still tons of great content here. I know that, and other questions. Just wanted to be respectful of people's time. Let y'all know it's 1 o'clock. We recognize if you got to go, definitely go. We'll send out slides and whatnot afterwards. But TJ's still rolling. He's got plenty of content.
Yeah, Actually, this is my last. This is kind of the end right here. I do have a lot more, but I wanted to leave some time for questions. But we have, I still have time. So if there's additional questions, happy to stick around.
Keep going.
So any additional questions, Michael?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Kevin's slipped in a quick question about the Nissan Chademo.
Yep, that's exactly what I'm talking about with vehicle to grid. So there is a company called Wallbox that is working on it. I've been talking with them in a lot of detail, and they may have their first version of it will be Chademo only. So Nissan, Mitsubishi, it will be bidirectional, but it will not provide backup power without a battery system like Tesla or SolarEdge storage. Asked if they are going to do an off-grid version. They said they're looking at it. So maybe sometime down the road. So I would expect maybe 2021. So this is that system, Quasar. So normally these DC chargers are the size of a fridge. So these guys figured out how to miniaturize it. But again, if you ordered this, you got it late this year, it would provide load support to your home when the grid is up. So it would not work. As soon as the grid goes down, it would go down. If you had a battery system, technically, now we still have a lot of research and verification to do, but technically, they said it would continue to work if you had a battery system like Tesla Powerwall or SolarEdge storage. I will probably end up testing it at my home first. So like I said, we go through a full research and design process before we handle anything new. But I think in the next few years, you'll see more options. It really has to be a certified solution. Like Nissan and Mitsubishi are saying, yes, we support that. Today, no other automotive manufacturer, Ford, GM, Volkswagen, nobody has said they are going to support that. Until they do, it would void your warranty.
Great, TJ. I got a couple questions here for you. Certainly a lot of curiosity around cost, but maybe speak more generally to it, knowing that there's folks joining us from different parts of Washington and Oregon where distance is a factor, or maybe you can turn people to your design consultants. I'll leave you that question.
Yeah, so just at a basic level, the cost of, say, a Tesla Powerwall, 6,000-7,000 for the battery. I think it's 6,700 for the battery is our cost, 1,100 for the backup gateway. There is a lot of labor. It usually takes 2 electricians 2 days to fully install one with all the wiring and commissioning and everything. So 15 to 18,000 for a single, and then 8 or 9 depending on where you're located. Our estimating software literally looks at what's the distance, how much time are we going to spend on the road, how much time are we going to spend on site. So we can give you a more specific one if you're working through one of our design consultants. But then remember, a quarter of that, 26% of it, you do get back as a federal tax credit. So if you have a tax liability, you got a tax bill, you're gonna have to write out a check. 26% of the cost of a system, solar storage, you can apply it to that tax liability. And so you're either not sending in a check or you're getting a refund your next time you file taxes. That does step down to 22% in 2021, and then it goes to 0 after that. So that, factor that in. We've been working hard to try to get it extended, increased, passed, and it has not yet had that. So I would say, get while the getting's good.
Thanks, TJ. How about using these applications for medical equipment or anything like that recommended?
So we are not, none of these systems are certified as a critical medical loads solution. generally speaking, when I was in IT, that's a 3-level backup where you had primary grid power, battery backup, and then generator supporting that. So you had at least 3. So as a component of it, you should have, a battery for your medical equipment that's going to last you as long as it needs, so you don't have to rely on the grid or this battery system, but it certainly could extend it. Again, we're not certified for it, but if the power goes out, you're going to switch over automatically to uninterruptible power supply on that medical device, most likely. But we're going to transfer so fast that that medical equipment won't even notice that there's an outage, and now you're running from solar and batteries. And it's only until those are fully discharged that you would then need to rely on the battery for that piece of medical device. So we could definitely extend it. We just aren't certified for it.
Thanks. How about any differences in pricing between the Tesla Powerwall solution and that of SolarEdge LG?
They do tend to come out pretty closely. LG often can come in a little bit less. It is a little bit smaller battery. It's 9.8 kilowatts versus 13.5. So it tends to come in a little bit less costly than a Powerwall. And oftentimes it's just, we're not doing whole home backup with it today. We can't today. So it tends to be less heavy duty wiring. So it does tend to come in several $1,000s less. We have asked for a smaller battery, even a smaller battery for people that want, a low cost solution. But today, we're still in that, 14K or so range after federal tax credit, closer to 10, 11,000. And again, these are just rough numbers. So Tesla, we do expect things, to slow, kind of like a flat screen TV, a little bit less, a little bit better each year. But I'm remodeling my home. I'm not waiting, and right now I actually haven't decided whether I'll do a StorageEdge system or I'll do with LG, or I'll do a Powerwall. I'm sort of still up in the air. I'm gonna have a fairly large array because I'm all electric, just heat pumps, 2 EVs. So I'll probably have like a 15, 20 kilowatt array. So I might need 2 or 3 Powerwalls, and I'm not sure if I can swing that with the wife. So we'll see. Lots of options for you.
Critical factor there, our partners.
Yeah, definitely. I designed a system for my architect, and what was interesting is he wanted solar to be net zero, and his wife said, you don't get solar unless I get battery backup, because I grew up with a lot of outages and I want to be ready for it. And he's getting a Cybertruck, so the plan is I designed this system for him, and if it's a half-day outage, he'll just run from a single battery and solar. If this becomes discharged, he can just plug in his Cybertruck. Like I said, they said it will have a 240 volt off-grid inverter in it, and so we'll just have a power intake here, just like you'd have for a generator. He'd plug one end into that, one end into his Cybertruck, and then he can tap whatever it is, 80, 100 kilowatt hours in his Cybertruck.
That's cool. Hey,
Yep.
Another question from Michaela. Have you done any research, TJ, or are manufacturers looking at alternates to mining rare minerals for a lot of the raw battery manufacturing right now?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, we talk to them fairly often, and we follow the industry. If you look, Tesla is kind of leading the way. They use a fraction of the amount of cobalt in there. So both of Tesla and LG's are nickel, manganese, cobalt, with cobalt being the most rare. So they are lessening the amount of cobalt in there more and more and more. And then you may see some additional. We really like NMC, nickel, manganese, cobalt chemistry for the Northwest because it does better in the cold. Lithium iron phosphate, LiFePO, has challenges when it gets below 42 degrees. The the battery management systems don't want to take a charge as much. So we're definitely monitoring it, and our feedback is, definitely lessen the amount of, cobalt if you can. There are a lot of chemistries in research and development. Tesla and LG are definitely, 1 and 2. LG was much larger than Tesla for the longest time, and I think with Gigafactory, I don't know, whichever one it was, Tesla, I think, is now the #1 lithium battery manufacturer. SolarEdge is also, they bought Kokum batteries, which I don't recall their chemistry, but they will, in addition to the LG battery that you see here, they'll also have their own wall mountable battery late this year.
Good question. A lot of us in the Northwest are getting heat pumps. How does that work into the mix in terms of how much backup power I might need?
Yeah, so yeah, it is becoming much more common. So if you have a heat pump and it's your only source of heat, we will include it. You just need to know that if you really crank that heat pump up, that's 2,000 or 3,000 watts, so it could lessen your battery run time. What often is the case is people have, propane or natural gas fireplaces and then heat pumps. And we just say, we'll back it up, but maybe dial it down and fire up your fireplaces if you think it's going to be a really long outage. I have an old battery system that I brought over. I'm in a rental right now where we're doing a remodel. During that last long outage, I flipped on both fireplaces and put a fan on it, and kept the even the furnace fan. It has gas heat in our rental. I didn't even run that because I thought for sure it was going to be 3 or 4 days. It only turned out to be about 24 hours or so, but we can definitely back it up. It is a significant load here in the Northwest. Heating is by far our largest load. In the summer, we don't really worry about heat pumps. Crank it up. Most likely, you'll want to crank it up. If we have an earthquake in the summer, you're going to have all this excess, right? You're going to be able to store, this much underneath here. You'll have all this extra. So, all day long, I would crank your heat pump, or if you have an air conditioner, crank that up to keep the house nice and cool. Use all that excess energy. So you don't have to run it in the evening. You can turn it off, run from battery during the evening, and wait for the morning until you get enough sun. You'll have additional charging going on.
Thanks, DJ. Just a few remaining questions, and still plenty of attendees. Thanks for sticking around, folks.
No problem.
What's kind of the ideal place to co-locate the equipment if I already have solar? What do I need to think about in terms of space?
Yeah, so if you look at a lot of the locations, if you have a garage, that's perfect. Here the meter is just on the other side of this panel, so we put all the equipment inside the garage on this one as well as this one. I can show hundreds of pairs. We've installed, I don't know, 200 batteries. We have a few that are outside. We don't recommend it, but sometimes there's no room. But we want to keep the gateway. We want to put the equipment as close to the meter as possible, usually, because that's usually where the panel is. Sometimes you have a panel on the inside of your house, like my architect buddy, his interior to his house. I said, we're not going to try to do all sorts of protected loads panel. We're just going to back up your whole house. And it was easy access from the outside, so we could back up everything in his home.
Awesome, thanks. All right, folks, what other questions do you have out there? I know we tackled a bunch of them. I'll give one more here to TJ. TJ, have you looked at flow batteries at all and their application?
Yeah, so flow batteries, we really don't see them as a residential solution. We really see those as a utility scale solution where you could have giant containers, giant vats of aqueous chemicals, and they're trying different ones out. We really don't see it as, I've not seen anything that looked like a real solution for residential. maybe for large commercial and industrial, maybe you have a container out on the property of a big property, and they might have flow batteries there. But as a residential solution, it's really either you're going old school lead acid or you're doing lithium ion. These are kind of we really look for something that's wall mountable, so that we don't have to deal with all of the issues around venting and stuff like that with lead acid flow, different battery chemistries. These are, perfectly safe to be inside.
Nice. Hey, Michael asks, and he must have microinverters on his current PV system. What do we think about in terms of AC, DC, and round trip efficiency?
Interesting question. So, Tesla is about 90% efficient. I think there's going to be more application for DC than people really consider. I could see in a few years where we might bring DC off the roof and it goes straight into your car battery, so you don't have to invert it multiple times. But I'm also a big fan of microinverters. So depending on the application, there's good pros and cons to each one. I actually wrote a 8-page document for our designers of all of the things, the pros, the cons, consider it, in this application, this one's superior, this application, that one is. I think they're both really good. But in overall efficiency, you're going to probably see 5% more in a DC coupled solution, because we're bringing, let me actually get an image here. Let's see, number 34. So in a DC coupled, so we're bringing DC power directly in and then going right into the battery, no inversion. We only invert it once to get AC power out to loads. So if you're doing a microinverter, we're inverting it from DC to AC here. We're bringing it down, and then we're inverting it again from AC back to DC to put it in the battery. And then when we want to use it, we invert it from DC to AC to use it for load. So we have one inversion versus 3. Now for a backup solution, I don't think it really matters, right? So if you're not cycling that battery all the time, I don't think, saving, 3, 4, 5% is a big deal for backup, because you're not going to be doing that all the time. But if we're in a situation where we're cycling that battery all the time, so this client here, he's in backup mode. We fill up the battery and it's waiting for an outage. In that scenario, either one work. The challenge sometimes for us in designing is we have a client that wants a 15 kilowatt array, and then we say, well, we have to have a really big battery system if we're AC coupled to that solar system, versus a DC solar system. I could have a 30, 40, 50 kilowatt array, and on one of the solar inverters, I might have one battery. So I can do a very large solar system and a small battery, or I could do a small, both of them, I can do a large battery system, but the challenge is large solar, small battery. So pros and cons.
TJ, going to get a little philosophical / maybe political here with this question from Richard, but what do you think the chances of the solar industry with their 260,000 workers in the US getting an extension on the federal tax credit?
$1 million question. I think part of the recovery from COVID-19, I think we'll want to make sure those people and many more are put back to work. I come out of the oil fields of North Dakota, Montana, and years ago I was talking with my family, and there's always been boom bust, and they're like, but this time it's different. And I laughed. I'm like, eventually there's going to be another bust. And oil went from over $100 a barrel a couple years ago down to, I think I saw it was at 18. And what's interesting, that is actually increasing the investment opportunity for renewable energy because it's seen as a better investment. Now they have a lot of stranded assets in coal. They've been stranded for a while now, and for natural gas, kind of the same thing. It's too expensive. It's 55 to do shale in North America. It's $55 a barrel. That's what they need in order for it to pencil out. And at 18, it's not going to happen. So interesting times, definitely interesting times.
Well, awesome. Thanks for that. All right, folks, there's still about 46 folks left online. Are there any other questions I can get to while we have TJ's attention here?
I'll actually, a common question that comes up with Powerwalls are, I've heard that it can only charge from solar, and that is mostly true. So Tesla's take on it is that to get 100% of the federal tax credit, the guidance says it should be charged 100% from solar. In order to do that, or primarily from solar, in order to do that, they sort of enforce it. So it will only charge from solar unless by default, they have something called Storm Watch. And when that's on by default, if this battery, say we're down low, and the weather service said, hey, there's thunderstorms coming in, and I think there just was thunderstorms supposed to come in yesterday, and it triggers a storm warning, Tesla will flip it to backup mode, even if you have it set in self-consumption mode, and it will charge the battery back up, even though you have solar. If you don't have solar, it's always going to use the grid. So here, this client, he wants it just in backup mode. We reserved 100% for backup, but he might want to do self-powered mode and then reserve, some percentage of it for backup. Like if it's spring, summer, and fall, I've got no problem. In the winter, just please set it in backup mode so that you have it all available. And we'll see after a few minutes, you'll start seeing this. Actually, it's generating so much, the battery won't kick in because he's generating so much from solar. So, but if there wasn't any solar, you'd see now those loads be serviced from the battery, because I'm running in self-powered mode.
All right.
Again, this is a Android app. There's an iOS app, and this particular client, funny thing is he is not a smartphone guy. He's our neighbor, so when he has an outage, I call him and tell him he has an outage, and every time I've called him, he's laughed and he goes, "Honey, did you know we're having an outage?" Doesn't even know, can't tell. He's had 33 total, 16 outages, 5 minutes, hours, several hours, 5, 6, 7 hours. So it's covered all those for him. He's never even noticed an outage.
Awesome.
Well, thank you very much. I'll let Michael close it out.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time and attention, everyone. That was our deep dive into modern lithium-ion battery storage. Just so you know, and I know a lot of us are stuck at home with either kids in middle school or high school, or maybe you yourself want to start at the beginning and think about Solar 101. You'll have the vocal stylings of me, myself, on this coming Thursday at noon, hosting a webinar called Solar 101, an intro to solar energy. We'll make it fun. We'll have some videos. We'll stimulate some conversation, and register at our website at a-rsolar.com/webinars. Thanks once again. Be safe out there. Keep those hands clean, and we will get through this together. Do contact us at a-rsolar.com/contact to work with any of our solar or battery designers remotely and safely. Thanks. Signing off. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much.